Eye on Northwest Politics, Taking Charge. Dr. Elizabeth Steiner takes the reins as the state's first woman treasurer. I sit down with Steiner to discuss her priorities for the state's budget, plus housing the homeless. The new director of Multnomah County's Homelessness Response System stops by. She'll discuss her new role and how she'll collaborate with other agencies in Portland Metro to tackle the homelessness problem. Plus, there is life after politics. A former candidate for mayor steps out of the limelight and gets back to work. Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Body. Let's get right to your top political headlines. It is back to the drawing board for Portland Mayor Keith Wilson and his efforts to bring city employees back to the office. In a statement to KOIN 6, Wilson says bringing staff back to the office 5 days a week will not be feasible this year. The change would have required contract changes with more than a dozen unions. Wilson says a return to the office is important to boost the downtown economy and downtown's vitality. A pair of Northwest lawmakers touting their committee assignments. In a release, Washington Representative Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez announced she'll serve on the House Appropriations Committee. That's the committee in charge of funding government activities. And the new 5th District Congresswoman for Oregon, Janelle Bynum, will serve on the House Financial Services Committee. Multnomah County District Attorney Nathan Vasquez says he'll prosecute passengers who use illegal drugs on public transit. A bill that went into effect at the beginning of the year makes drug use on trains, streetcars, and buses a criminal offense. People caught using drugs on public transit could face a year in jail, a $6,000 fine, or both. For the first time in the state's history, Oregon has elected a woman as state treasurer. Democrat Elizabeth Steiner defeated Republican Senator Brian Boquist and economics professor Mary King to win the position by a comfortable margin. Steiner served 12 years as a state senator starting in 2012, representing Northwest Portland and Beaverton. As co-chair of the Joint Ways and Means Committee, she helped write the state's budget. She's a physician by trade and an adjunct professor at Oregon Health and Science University. Treasurer Steiner, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics and congratulations.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
I attended your swearing in at the Oregon Historical Society earlier this week. There was much made of the glass ceiling that you broke in, both in being a woman and as the first openly LGBTQ state treasurer. So what does all that mean to you?
You know, we have a very diverse state. And when only one kind of person serves an elected office, any elected office, we don't have the variety of perspective we need to serve Oregonians well. The reality is, for example, that in most households, it's the women who run the family budget. So women have been managing money, and I certainly was for many years as co-chair of the Budget Committee. And having that perspective as someone who's run her family's budget, who's run the state's budget, and now is going to be helping other families gain economic security, gain financial security, means that I have a perspective that many people don't, and many of the men who've served might not have had. Not that they weren't great at their jobs, but I think I bring a new perspective to serve Oregonians in a different way.
As the state's chief investment officer, I almost said financial officer, but the state's chief investment officer, you manage about $140 billion in state investments. How healthy is the state treasury, and what are your ideas about what to do in order to shore it up? So
the good news for the state overall is that we're doing well financially. The challenge, of course, is that on the budget side, and really that's where we have a question of the state finances at some level. On the budget side, expenses often outstrip the increases in revenues, right? And that's been true for many families in the state over the past several years. So that's something that the legislature and the governor are going to have to sort out. On the treasurer's side, one of the biggest investments we manage is the Oregon Public Employee Retirement Fund, or OPERF, which is the fund that provides retirement benefits for people who've served our state for many years. That's in reasonable shape. It could definitely be in better shape, because the better funded our pension system is, the less money current employers have to pay in, and the more money there is to put teachers in classrooms or firefighters in the station to serve people across our state. So we're going to be working hard to continue to improve our investments and grow the pension fund so that we reduce the impact on employers and can spend more money actually serving Oregonians rather than just paying down our pension debt.
Are you looking at any divestments?
Well, certainly there's been a lot of conversation about fossil fuels. I'm sure you've heard that as well. And while I certainly appreciate the climate impact of that, what I would say is that we are looking at moving away from carbon-intensive investments and toward clean energy investments, because that's the smart thing to do as a fiduciary, the trustee of these important accounts. We don't think that fossil fuels will be a good investment for the state in the relatively near future. So we need to start moving away from those investments and toward investments that will be profitable, like clean energy. And that will have the additional effect of reducing the carbon impact, the carbon footprint of our portfolio. But first and foremost, we're focused on our fiduciary responsibility.
In the short term, won't those type of divestments have a negative impact on the portfolio?
No, we'll be doing them very carefully, and we won't be divesting quickly. We will be working closely. I have a wonderful Chief Investment Officer, Rex Kim, who's the sort of in charge of the day-to-day operations, and I work with the Oregon Investment Council, obviously, closely to do these things in a very thoughtful, deliberate way. I'd make the analogy that in the early 1900s, if the state had been invested in buggy manufacturing, it probably would have been wise to move away from that, right? Because automobiles were becoming more and more prevalent. So we would have had to do that in a very deliberate way. There would have been a period of time when those investments overlapped, the profitability overlapped. But we have to move away from buggy whips, away from buggies, and toward automobiles, or conversely, away from fossil fuels and towards clean energy.
At your swearing in, you emphasize education and setting Oregonians up better for retirement. What influence does the treasurer have in those areas and spending money in those areas?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is one of the most exciting pieces of what we do at Treasury. The Treasury has the Oregon Savings Network, and that includes what are called 529 or college savings plans, which are accounts that people can set up when children are born and that grow over time as family members or friends add into them. Those accounts can be used for almost any kind of education after high school, whether you're going into a skilled trade or to a four-year university or on to graduate school. Those accounts make a big difference in kids' ability to get education. So helping more families do that, only about 1 in 8 kids has a 529 account. Helping more families do that makes higher education, post-high school education, more affordable and accessible for kids across the state. That's a path towards long-term economic security for people. We run Oregon Saves, which is the state's retirement program for people whose employer doesn't offer one. Social Security alone is not enough. We need people to save for their retirement and save early and often, so we can help them do that. The ABLE accounts help people with disabilities save without impacting their benefits. And we want to keep pushing all of those programs out so more people take advantage of them and save for their and their children's future. We also run in financial empowerment programs where we partner with nonprofits, with schools, with all sorts of organizations. Our credit unions are great partners, to make sure that we help educate Oregonians about how to achieve financial security, about the little changes that people can make to really save for their future. And those are things we'll be working on hard.
You are succeeding Tobias Reed, who won his race for Secretary of State, correct. Is there anything that you're bringing from his administration into yours?
Oh gosh, then Treasurer Reed, now Secretary Reed, did a great job. He and his team were awesome, and they grew Treasury substantially. They started the Oregon Saves program, which was legislation he helped pass when he was in the legislature, and got that up and rolling and going really well. They brought unclaimed and trust property over from the Department of State Lands to Treasury. That's something your viewers should pay attention to. So all of those programs are operating well, and I'll certainly be looking to take all the great people who are working at Treasury, help them continue to do their jobs well, and grow those programs in addition to probably starting some new initiatives.
What's going to be your number one priority now that you're new in this job, getting adjusted to it? What do you want to do first?
Well, what do I want to do first is a different question than what do I want to do in the long term. But, you know, right now for the first 6 months, we'll be in legislative session, and I'll have a few priorities. obviously we'll have a budget to pass, and that's going to involve talking with the legislature about our need for more staffing to, for example, manage those changes in our portfolio in ways that ensure that we protect and grow our portfolio while still moving away from unprofitable investments and toward more profitable ones. But that takes more staff in a more complex environment. Our unclaimed and trust property that I mentioned, that's where accounts that haven't been accessed for a long time come to the state so that people can get them back. But that's happening more and more frequently, or more and more people are dying without a will. So we need to expand our staffing there. So I've got a big budget to pass and a great team of people at Treasury to work with to do that. We have legislation that will be moving forward to get the legislature's support and direction around what we call the net zero plan to move our portfolio to net carbon zero over the next 20 years or so. But we want the legislature engaged with that, so we have legislation to do that. We have a few other pieces of legislation we'll be working on. So for the first 6 months, we'll be focused on budget and some legislation that's very important to help us do our jobs well. After that, we'll be able to focus more on things like financial empowerment and some new programs that we hope to be looking into, like child savings accounts.
State Treasurer Elizabeth Steiner, thank you very much for joining us on Eye on Northwest Politics, and good luck with the new position.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Ken.
Next, she's just been appointed to direct the City of Portland's and Multnomah County's effort to shelter and house thousands of homeless. So what will Jillian Shoney do that hasn't been done before? And will it help Portland Mayor Keith Wilson achieve his goal of ending unsheltered homelessness? Our conversation right after the break.